Thank you very much, Cyprian. Good afternoon, everyone. I got the after-lunch session, which is, the best, because you're all fed, you're all happy, but also the worst, because as lights dim out, you will slowly fall asleep. I'm not going to hypnotize you. I think you may have had the impression in some moments during the presentations today and in the presentations that are going to follow, that you are actually being hypnotized, that these positive visions of the future that you are being presented with are at the reach of the hand, that if we apply the right investment, if we have the right commitment, if we are dedicated enough to pursue a prosperous, sustainable, happy future, it will come. Well, I keep my fingers crossed for that, and I really hope it does. However, the issue with futures is that it never quite gets as we expected it to be. Even though I've had many Cassandra moments in my career where I realized that something I was working on or something my team was working on with a client actually came to pass, actually was realized, it didn't mean that future can be predicted. Stanisław Lem, a Polish science fiction writer, very famous in the 20th century. It was his centennial last year, so maybe some of you heard about him or even read his books, or at the very least, maybe you've seen the movie Solaris with George Clooney. Well, I hope, or the old Solaris movie made by Tarkovsky, the Soviet director. He also claimed to be a futurologist. He was proud throughout most of his life that he has, because he was earning enough money from writing his science fiction books, that he can also focus on essays and philosophy of the future and coming up with scenarios and predictions. But later in his life, when he's become old and not bitter, but just when he's had the hindsight over his own predictions, he came to the conclusion that is displayed on the screen, that future is never what we want it to be. It's never what we predicted. Never turns out a little better or a little worse from the baseline that we expect. It's always strange, weird. So there is no reason to believe we are in a particularly different position, that our future will be as planned, that the future of the organizations that you are in or that you represent, or the startups that you're going to found, or the investments that you're going to make are going to develop as planned. If future was like a long, straight road stretching out somewhere out there, disappearing in the fog of war, in the fog of uncertainty, that would be very easy. And we as humans, because we are pattern-seeking animals, we are social and pattern-seeking creatures, we want to see in social interaction an order to things, purposefulness, a way of being able, saying that someone is unpredictable is not an exactly very kind words to address to someone. We want the reality to be predictable. And strategic foresight is often expected to reduce this uncertainty, to reduce the avoidable surprises, to give you a sense of security in this volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. But then, even though the results are there, and as you've heard from Simon this morning, if you embrace uncertainty, if you do a systematic, structured, rigorous analysis of change and the future, you may end up in a better position than your competitors. And there are studies from our colleagues who say that the companies that use strategic foresight achieve up to 33% more in terms of growth and 100% more in terms of return on investment on research and development. That would be too easy. That would be, being able to nail it about the future is still an elusive and quite, hard to capture moment. A moment of success in the future depends on so many things. This is why what I'm going to tell you today and what I will advocate for is that you will need to hedge for the future. You will not take more conservative positions. You will not be able to buy insurance or hedge with currency options or use other techniques to reduce this uncertainty. To embrace this uncertainty, as you've heard from Simon this morning, you will need something completely opposite. You will need a moonshot vision. You will need to set yourself goals for your organizations, regardless if you are social innovators, entrepreneurs, investors, or coming from big or small organizations in the public sector, in the private sector. What you really need now is to shoot for the moon, is to set yourself goals that are at the outer limit of what seems reasonable and realistic, to use techniques and methods and innovations that are not yet there, but also to address fundamental challenges. And they are ample. There's a big list like the Sustainable Development Goals, but your communities and your markets have their own fundamental challenges, big flows that reduce efficiency, big issues that are an obstacle to diversity and inclusion, or maybe deeply rooted issues that make sustainability unthinkable in your business or on your market. This is why you should go for the moon. Oh, whoa, what's going on? Yeah, that was a little preview. And to do this, I'm sorry, there is no easy instruction. You can't create a masterpiece in a painting by number way. There is no blueprint for engaging with moonshot goals and for delivering on them. If there was, each one of us could be not only an artist and a creative person, but a creator of masterpieces. And this is a privilege, unfortunately still, of the very few. If Rembrandt used, a paint-by-numbers technique, or Bob Ross, television show methods, I don't think he would quite create the Night Guard and other of his great oeuvres. Let's go through 3 spaces, through 3 domains in which you can start looking, now as you listen, and today during the Future Summit, and tomorrow, where you can start to look for the moonshots, for the new goals. Why you should do so? If what I said so far was not convincing, if what I said so far about moonshots being a way to engage with the volatility and uncertainty, of embracing this uncertainty, of increasing your chances of not failing in the future, maybe you listen to that. You probably know the limits to growth, the famous report by the Club of Rome from the 70s, where they predicted our civilization will collapse in the 20s, 30s, maybe 40s of the 22nd century. And this was done by a computer, so of course it was not trusted when it came out initially. But now, just 2 years ago, my colleagues from KPMG from Canada set out to recalculate the models that the authors of Limits to Growth, the big report from the 70s, came up with. And you know what they found out? It's happening. It's happening because the rate of innovation, as much as we praise and as much as we say there is more innovation in almost every domain of life, and digital layers of reality enable the speed of innovation, the speed of change this gives some people, really vertigo, that they cannot quite grasp it. It's still not enough. If we want to pursue a pathway of innovation towards sustainability, we need to radically speed up the pace of innovation. We need to radically speed up the pace at which new solutions and new technologies that are more green, are more sustainable, replace the old ones. We're losing this. We're trailing behind what is the baseline expected for a survival scenario in Limits to Growth. This is why I want you to focus on 3 domains, starting with mobility, but rethinking mobility not as an issue of public transport or as an issue of doing the last mile on deliveries or reducing carbon footprint of cargo, freight, and airplanes. Going on a holiday, on a city break on a plane, or not going. This kind of choices. Think about mobility as mobility in all domains, not only the physical domain, but also the virtual reality domain, the metaverse domain, the different digital layers that will, sooner or later, because it's happening now. Today, when I was having the future game, there were some people in the audience who were listening and tapping on their smartphones. I'm not offended anymore. I don't think anybody should. It's just that the merger between the virtual, the digital world, and the physical world is already taking place. We've learned cognitive protocols that allow us to participate in real life and at the same time be online, be active online. Think what lies a few steps away from now. What level of integration with brain-computer interface or with the metaverse or with other inventions, what level of connection will we reach? And what will mobility mean in this context? Can we still have one internet around the world where you can reach, except for the federated networks where you can reach any place? Can we still afford it? Can we agree for this politically? Can we have safe commons, the virtual world as a safe commons? And there's, of course, the other frontier of mobility. So going beyond our planet, going beyond Earth. The space sector is developing very, very rapidly. And this is banal to say that, it would be good to get a ticket to ride on this growing trend of space innovations. They are, however, space and mobility is not only about launching rockets and setting out satellites or going to the moon and going to Mars. It is also about how space technologies affect the mobility I was talking about a couple minutes ago. It's about the connectivity, the unprecedented and unheard of levels of connectivity and bandwidth that come with the development of space technologies. Look for your moonshot here. How you can use this new space frontier in your social innovation, in working with those who are excluded, those who are unprivileged. Think about it. Don't think about what you've had for the last couple of years on what you've worked so far. It's likely, no offense, not enough. It's not the moonshot that you need to really say that you are embracing uncertainty. Ta-da. Yes. The second domain is sustainability. And this is another domain in which, as much as we have fantastic new solutions and new inventions you've heard, and you've also witnessed, some of the more sustainable ways to feed, like the vegan food we've had, and sustainable packaging and so on. We see a big trend growing of such things around us. But still, if we do not, especially now in this difficult moment when given the escalation of war in Ukraine, we are in a looming energy crisis. If we lose momentum on decarbonization, if we lose momentum on phasing out lignite and hard coal-fired plants in Europe as our competitive edge, but also globally, it doesn't only mean that we will have them a couple of years later, or we will find a different solution. If we lose this momentum, we will land in the situation that I just described in the context of limits to growth. We'll just be below the baseline. If we don't phase out coal now, if we don't reform the energy sector, we will not be able to reach out and take benefit from the hydrogen economy, the one that is clean, the one that is, a beautiful opportunity for many. And what we shall have after the hydrogen, or in the mature hydrogen economy, we will perhaps never learn in our lifetime what opportunity awaited beyond this. Opportunity, yes, this is the world. The opportunity to, and the third domain, to live longer, to live a healthier life. And you hear from people in the Singularity University circles, so among many influential tech gurus in the United States, but also in Europe, about longevity as a big trend. Well, I'm not an advocate of longevity or, at the least, the cryopreservation, having your head taken off at the end of your life and put in a tank so that you may be revived later. I'm not preaching this. I'm trying to preach to you or to ask you in your quest for moonshots, in your quest for very ambitious goals, over-ambitious goals, as a way to embrace uncertainty, I'm asking you to consider what this longevity shall mean. If we have a trend in the developed economies and in Romania as well of a sustained growth in life expectancy over decades, how we deal with a reality in which this longevity trends brings us into a reality where youth is so precious, where youth is so valued, that because it's almost inexistent and because it's just a distant memory for everyone, what does it mean? How can we preserve the beauty of youth without putting it in a sort of a scansion or an incubator? And finally, the opportunity of not leaving anyone behind. In the race for the big moonshots that I was talking, in the digital frontier of mobility, in the space frontier of mobility, in the race for sustainability in which we cannot lose one step or skip one beat in pursuing it. We also need to remember that the pace of innovation and the speed of change is already unbearable to many. Many people can't stand it, in terms of their mental health, in terms of their psychological well-being. They are already being left behind. Maybe this is the place where you should look for your next moonshot, regardless if you're from a startup, you're a social innovator, you're with the military. Preserving the fragile and often frail balance, psychological balance in the world where we should expect, because there seems to be no other way except for collapse, we should expect new stimuli. This is also a challenge, how to keep people in their sound minds, given that things should be only accelerating, because if they are not, then we are doomed to collapse. This all may seem a little bit overwhelming, but if you treat these models seriously, if you treat the predictions that relate to the climate change or loss of biodiversity or soil, water, air pollution, if you look at the mega trends that really do shape the realities in which we live, well, you shouldn't be overwhelmed. You should try and somehow, again, embrace the risks and uncertainties they bring. Try to get ahead of the curve. Then, as you will see, if you get there, if you take this, it will give you a moment of relief, a precious moment of relief that comes from realization that for a moment you will be alone, but not lonely. There are very, very few people who actually engage with these moonshots and that set out goals and pursue the goals that really mean something for the big race for sustainability and the big race for the survival of businesses and markets or the survival of humankind on planet Earth. This moment where you reach the blue ocean, very old, almost unused marketing term, where you reach the blue ocean of moonshots, you will most likely encounter freedom. When you paddle out into the big, wide, and deep waters of real change, you will see how few people are there. But I encourage you not to just be there and get lonely, but to drag others after you, to engage with other innovators and other organizations to pursue these moonshot goals that will, in the new business reality, in the new social innovation reality, in the new security setup, be necessary for us to survive and thrive. Thank you very much.
Well,
I'm happy to take some questions.
That was so very insightful. If you have, we also have an online question that we got. But before that, let's go to one question there. Do we have a mic? Thank you.
Your speech was really inspiring. You should know that. It was so beautiful. One question that I have for you. Do you think that in the society we live in right now, we have the free will to actually do and take this leap of faith towards moonshots?
I do not only believe that we have the social setup or the social prerequisites for do this. I also think there is actually capital for that, financial capital for this. With the level of fluency of capital investment, especially in the venture capital investments globally, I see, and I'm surprised why many people who could have gone even more ambitious, who could have gone even more revolutionary in their quest for funding of their ventures, be it commercial or social, why then they don't aim higher? Because with the amount of financial capital that is available for breakthrough innovation and for radical new ventures, I think yes, it's there. I'm not saying it's easy to get, but I'm saying it is available. And if something is available, then it's basically you can plan for getting hold of it.
If I could follow up with one more small question, all right. Do you think it's really important to follow the system, that the educational type of system, to manage to get this kind of moonshots, or you could just go on your own road and go with instinct, with intuition in life?
I wish I had a different answer, because I wish that there was ways outside of the system to deal with it. Individualistic, free, and rebellious ways of doing this. I would subscribe to this. But if you look at economic indicators, and if you look at the total factor productivity, so compound factor that describes the amount of investment that is required for an upgrade, a technological upgrade, getting to the next stage of development of in the big macroeconomic terms, you will see that over the last 30 years, the total productivity factor gain is getting lower and lower. It's increasingly hard to get ahead. And actually, we are not accelerating much. There's a lot of happening. We get a lot of information, but it's harder and harder to make the next step. This is why the people who go for moonshots should not shun investment or systemic support, structural support through venture capital investment or even from public aid for this, but also they need to take into account collaboration as an absolute must. It's no longer a world where you can invent something like a surgical tool 100 years ago, have it named in your name, as a memento forever that you've invented, some kind of, broken spoon that you can use to perform some procedure. This era is over. In synthetic biology, in AI, in all kind of the domains that I was referring to, it's no longer the lone gunman, it's no longer the mavericks, it's the teams of mavericks. And this is why I was saying that you can't get lonely in the blue ocean of moonshots.
I like this term, teams of mavericks. Are you a student? First year, second year? High school.
Cool.
Oh, that's really awesome.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful, by the way, not just to you, to all the high school and students, college people that also joined us. I think it's important.
Maybe you should write him some kind of thing that he brings to school that he wasn't, It's okay. No, it's a good school. You have good schools in Romania.
What are technologies that excite you and scare you?
That excite me and scare me. Well, the only thing that really scares me is automated weapons systems. That's the only thing that I'm really afraid of. And especially now that I see very clearly in work I pursue with several clients, both in civilian and military sector, I see that the acceptance level rate and sort of permission for the deployment of automated weapons system is growing. It hasn't reached the moment yet where you would have, the turrets like in StarCraft, shooting at random targets. But we are getting closer and closer to this point. This is the only thing that really scares me, except, of course, for, disinformation by climate denialists, but this is not a technology. This is as old as the world is. Technologies that excite me, they are legion. But lately, I think it's the synthetic biology that offers not only, a new vaccine, or a new therapy, or a new dietary supplement, but could offer replacement of what we see around us with organic and bionic, not mineral and dead, not dead environment, but a living environments in which we could be, immersed in living, living creatures living in symbiosis with living environment.
We'll have a session after you with Maxim about deep tech and some other types of technologies. So I think I'm looking forward to having you in the same room and also interacting to see how we get it. I have a question as well. Is there any other? Okay, one question there. Can you? Thanks.
Yes.
Start off with saying that I think that two notions in your speech really impacted me, and that is the blue ocean of moonshots, because there are a lot of moonshots and very, very few people willing to make them.
Yeah.
I also love the way that you put it. You can get financing for your idea from a venture capital, and all we are looking is people with ideas. And if you can bring them those ideas, then you can make a change in the world. And also dragging others after you. I think that that is very important, to drag people after you. And my question for you, and my question for you is, because you said that many people can't stand innovation and many are left behind, how should society address this inequality that I was talking to other speakers in the lunch break? How can society avoid this greater divide in our societies where a few people have a lot of technological expertise and the rest have none? How can we fix this?
Yeah, I don't think there is an easy answer. I thought once that the answer is to have, parallel access, so that you have digital access and non-digital access. But this leads, to even further marginalization of those who do not use the digital means. One way of, and I was referring to this in the game session today. There is reference often to, the indigenous knowledge or the ways of doing things that are particular to people who have some kind of a disadvantage, like the digital disadvantage. Well, I believe that with AI, we can, and with application of AI to design and design thinking, we can come up with new, very unintuitive food for the digital natives, but more intuitive for those who are excluded from the digital realm, more intuitive ways of interacting with IT and ICT systems. What are they? I don't know, because I am not, I don't belong to this unfavorable, to this poor crowd of people who are left behind. I don't feel, but I will soon be, I guess, 10 years from now, maybe 20 years from now. And I hope that by then, some of you will sort out the sort of co-design using AI that will help me, keep my old ways, the ways that we are using, and not
You're
feel
looking at me for, I'm
we're more or less the same generation.
we might have a beard and roughly the same age, but, I am very non-conservative. I really...
well, let's
I have
wait
an
another
Instagram
20
account
years.
for about 6 months.
Good. So I hope that, I won't be left behind, and I have faith in this kind of solution.
Yeah. Short question from my side about Poland. Is, futurist thinking is something that you see developed in Poland? Is it at the beginning? How can we be as developed as you in this country?
Yesterday when we were having dinner, you quoted whom, Schwab, yes? Or Klaus Schwab, who told you that Romania is living in the past, yes?
Yeah, well, that's what he said.
Well, I've heard this so many times about Poland, so I sort of feel for you, and I think it's completely untrue, because, except for a very few people who want to, get ahead in the political race bar, using resentment and all this, don't think many people care about the past more than about the future, The identity, the tradition, it's all there, it's all important, but it doesn't stop the diffusion of innovations, really. I've never met someone who would say, well, there are people, but there are very, very few who said, I won't use a smartphone because it's, against my values. I won't use a smartphone because I don't need it. I don't use a smartphone because I don't see a purpose for it. I won't use a smartphone because I don't want to become enslaved by the corporations. Yes, this kind of answers I do get, but not because it wasn't there, so it will no longer be. Poland is having its many issues and challenges now, especially in the macroeconomic sphere, but I don't think anyone really in our region is, looking backwards, looking over the shoulder constantly. I think the drive for the future is very strong. Only, like I said in the presentation, it is not nearly as intense and not nearly as fast as it should be to meet the goals that we set, the goals of survival and of prosperity for our societies that we
let's accelerate together, and let's see how we accelerate Central and Eastern Europe
Put this
together.
foot down. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Let's give a big round of applause.
Thank you very much.
Kacper.
Thanks again.